I consider myself lucky that my parents were so open about sex. Odd, I know. Many kids may not feel the same way about having open dialogues about sexuality with their parents. And yet, there I was, 6 years old in bed, waiting for a story before I slept. Little did I know that one of my mothers was about to whip out a fantastic little book about the mysteries of sexuality. See, she hit puberty at a young age and wanted me to be prepared in case the same fate were to fall onto me. While there were definitely many years before this happened, you can never really start too early, if you ask me. After a few nights of reading, I felt as if I contained all of the knowledge in the world. I knew all of the technical terms to all of my secret places. Yet, through the years, the reinforcement of this information in school never really came. Year after year, my peers and friends didn't even know their own anatomy. I was actually one of them. The conversations with my mother as a first grader didn't quite cover all the bases. For example, I was 13 before I found out that females don't pee out of their vagina, and I acquired this information from a friend. Looking back, I was never the most comfortable with the topics of sex and anatomy during my years of puberty. When I got my period, I cried and cried because I didn't want to grow up without my peers. While the same situation was probably happening to them, nobody talked about it, inside or outside of the classroom. Mostly conversations with friends consisted of boys and schoolwork. When a sex ed presentation was offered as an optional evening class, I refused to attend because I was convinced I already knew everything I needed to know. Plus, secretly, I didn't want to face this topic with my school's nuns and awkwardly prepubescent peers. My younger self would have rather done anything else than sit in a room full of peers and stare at pictures of genitals. With my almost 9 years of Catholic education, sex was never really a hot topic in the classroom. This was the case until the 8th grade. Our hot 20-something school counselor came into class and sat the girls on one side and boys on the other. Together, we awkwardly watched a 90s video on the development of our bodies and all those weird feelings that we get. Looking back, this was a good experience because I learned a lot. For example, I had never even heard of wet dreams or masturbation before that point. Many of my high school friends had similar experiences where they did not receive a classroom talk until the 8th grade. In the worst cases, there are a handful who did not receive the talk until their freshman year of high school. Do you think that first presenting this information on sex ed should take place so late? By freshman year, students are aged 14 to 15, while puberty on average hits girls 10 to 11 and boys at 12. A CDC report states that more than 80% of high school teens aged 15 to 17 had no formal sex education before they first had sex. That's like getting into a car without having any driver's ed. While the ramifications are radically different, like getting an STD versus crashing a car, the idea is still the same. Students are presented with the information and then are left to decide if they want to engage in said activity, whether it be sex or driving. They're also given the proper safety precautions in case they choose to engage, like contraceptives or seatbelts. I mean, in driver's ed, they don't tell you not to drive. They simply provide you with the information and then leave you to decide if you want to engage, with not a lot of pressure to get behind the wheel. So, why is this information coming so late? Education is a fundamental human right. The same should be applied to education about our own bodies. While parents should definitely talk to their children about the reality of sexuality, society can't rely solely on them to get the information across. Instead, it's up to the American school system to provide our youth with the facts that they need to know to have safe sex and get consent. My dream is for my children and your children to be taught about sexuality before puberty starts and before they start considering sexual activity. And of course, the classroom can't cover everything. Like when I was in the 8th grade, I heard a sex term that I didn't know. I thought, what the heck could that be? In a later gossip session with a BFF of mine, she bravely Googled the term. You can probably assume that 99% of those search results were online pornography. The phenomenon of our generation getting our sex information via the internet is incredible. With the World Wide Web at our fingertips, we can find out everything we need to know. And when we aren't getting this information from parents and teachers, we can easily explore for ourselves. Yet, whenever we Google the phrase sex or nearly anything like it, the results are pornography. Having pornography be one of the primary sources of sex information can be detrimental to one's sexual development. Whether it be violent or non-violent, it does bother me that so many prepubescent, pubescent, and post-pubescent teens are consuming this content. I, for one, wouldn't want my child watching these videos without knowing what real sex should be like. We need to reclaim this information, place the responsibility onto teachers and trusted adults, and not spray-tanned, fully waxed, overly muscular, unrealistic porn stars. Our youth is in our own hands. We need to create open dialogues between children, teens, and adults regarding sexuality and anatomy. Start young. Think back to that adorable 6-year-old me. She was young and eager to learn anything her moms could have told her. And what about your children? Whether it be 6 or 16, start a conversation. Sure, it might be awkward, but isn't that better than misinformation? Or none at all? Everyone goes through puberty. Everyone has genitals. And everyone will have to navigate their own sexuality. It's not dirty, it's not shameful, and it's definitely not a secret. Thank you very much.